Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome to this webinar. My name is David Peter, and today I'm going to be your host together with my colleague Adam Balogh.
Hello, everyone.
In this webinar, we are going to we are both technical writers at Pronovix, and in this webinar, we are going to talk about documentation maturity. We have 4 main sections in this webinar. First, we are going to talk about the developer portal in general, who are the stakeholders, documentation types on the Devportal. Then we will move on to maturity models. We will provide you sort of an overview, what they are measuring, what information they provide, etc. Then we will move on to our developer portal content maturity model. We will discuss the different levels in detail, and at each level we will highlight best practices to follow, tooling tips, accessibility tips, which accessibility guidelines and standards should you follow. And in the last section, we will introduce some of our technical writing services with which we believe we could help you along in this maturity journey. And last but not least, the floor will be yours. But in the meantime, you can ask questions in the chat, and we encourage you to keep the chat alive and don't be afraid to engage in conversations with each other. And then we will try to address your questions at the end of the webinar. So let's get right into it. I give the mic to Adam.
Yeah, thank you very much. So initially, developer portal content primarily focused on developers themselves and was heavily centered around reference documentation. However, as the landscape has evolved, so have the expectations and the needs of a broader range of stakeholders. Today, developer portal needs to function not only as a resource for developers, but also as a self-service support hub. It should provide all the necessary materials and services to its users, building trust and fostering strong relationships. This means catering to all API stakeholders, helping not only developers, but also potential API customers, business decision makers, and other interested parties. A mature developer portal is an environment that generates trust, guides users smoothly through the API integration process, and supports long-term engagement. In other words, it should serve as a reliable resource that helps maintain and even strengthen your relationships with your API consumers. Content needs to drive relevance, engage users, and increase satisfaction. Your content should be user-centered and relevant, aligning with user needs at each stage of their journey. Engaging content helps users efficiently find what they need, contributing to a positive experience. High-quality onboarding materials speed up integration, making it easier for new users to get started with their APIs. Clear communication ensures complex API concepts are easily understood, reducing support load and enabling users to solve issues independently. Quality documentation, such as, for example, other types like blog posts, also fosters community building and serves as a marketing tool to showcase your service's value. Solid content strategy can ensure your portal evolves and stays relevant. And as your dev portal matures, your documentation must expand significantly. So API documentation remains critical, including reference docs, release notes, overviews, along with business-level docs to help non-developers grasp your API's value. But onboarding materials such as tutorials, step-by-step guides, examples, tryout sections ensure users can quickly familiarize themselves with your services, your APIs, or other integration types. SDKs also simplify integration. Clear troubleshooting and support resources help users resolve issues efficiently, while showcasing community content demonstrates real-world impact and engage the community. Metrics docs provide, for example, AC status, uptime, and usage data, helping users monitor performance. So as your project grows, you will need to diversify and improve documentation to meet evolving user needs, delivering the right information at the right time. And so that we cover the documentation part, we can take a look on the key stakeholders involved in creating content for Devportal. Developers are, of course, control, so to say, but whether they are internal or external users, but other stakeholders are equally important. Product owners manage the product lifecycle, marketing and salespeople position it in the market, developer evangelists advocate for the API and support the deliverer community, and support teams ensure users receive the help they need. And we are here, tech writers, documentarians, responsible for writing and maintaining accurate user-friendly content, while also we have site administrators who manage the technical side of the portal. So depending on your organization, other roles are also involved in this whole journey. And each stakeholder brings unique expertise, making cross-functional collaboration essential. All teams must work together to ensure the portal runs smoothly and meets user expectations at every stage. Yeah. And if you're interested in more details regarding Devportal stakeholder and customer needs, check out our related blog posts and webinar recordings. You will find the links, I hope, in the chat, but of course we will hand it over to you later.
I'll send the slides too,
yeah.
So we are able to access it.
And ultimately, while it is crucial to have the right technology stack in place, your developer portal won't succeed without meeting the minimum content-related requirements. As we've seen, this includes both expanding your documentation types and consistently improving the quality of that content. And this is also important to emphasize that the maturity of your APIs on your or the company doesn't necessarily reflect the maturity of your dev portal. It's a separate project that must start from somewhere, requiring you to build it from the ground up, assign the right people, designate an owner, and develop a clear plan for its success. And now that we've discussed stakeholders and types of content needed, let's shift our focus to the broader concept of maturity models and how they relate to dev portals. So maturity models are designed to help organizations assess their current states and understand the steps required to advance to the next level. Examples include Kong's API platform engineering maturity model, Kapos content operations maturity model, and Pronovix also has a three-dimensional developer portal maturity model. While these models may differ in scope, what they have in common is they focus on defining the stages of maturity based on certain characteristics and offer guidance on how to progress from one stage to the next. But as we saw, most of these portals are centered around the features and both around content, but particularly they are, so to say, related to the portal's usability. The more user-friendly and feature-rich your dev portal becomes, the more mature it is considered. However, we want to emphasize the importance of content itself as a critical factor in dev portal maturity, at least in the content level, of course. High quality, well-structured content can have just as much of an impact on the overall maturity of the dev portal as its technical features. A well-written piece of documentation is just as essential as a well-functioning API product. The two are inseparably linked, and one cannot exist without another if you are talking about a successful dev portal project. So our maturity model specifically focuses on content evolution, but of course it cannot be fully separated from the dev portal itself. We examine key factors like the existence and state of documentation, what we refer to as around in a minimum viable documentation, we'll be introduced later. The tools that needed to maintain documentation at a certain level, as well as accessibility standards that need to be incorporated. While accessibility may not be a focus in the early stages of the portal, but as the portal matures, this becomes increasingly important, especially when dealing with content beyond text. So we also look into actionable steps to create missing documentation and improve existing content, and the content types required at each level to ensure a fully functional and mature portal. It is also important to recognize that organizations aren't the same. And as a result, every organization's version of a maturity model will need to be customized a bit to fit its specific circumstances. So a maturity model is a way to articulate how well your organization can create and implement content strategies. And the purpose is to set a direction, provide a basis to build from, and enable growth. But yeah, it's crucial to understand that these models are not one size fits all, of course. They shouldn't dictate every step you take, but rather offer a framework maybe for progression. You may adopt an existing model or even create your own, but it's important to avoid viewing these models as rigid checklists, so to say. Instead, use them in ways that help you achieve your objectives. There is no single linear path, of course, to success, so organizations may find themselves skipping levels or even moving backwards sometimes. So some certain changes may happen, which can cause some diversification. So, for example, shifting priorities, changes in leadership, and so on. So, yeah, an organization might find itself dropping back a level if content is no longer in focus, but we have a model to help you on the way. And as just as earlier, if you're interested in more details regarding our Devportal operational developer experiences business maturity model, check out our related blog posts and webinar recordings. And now we discussed the various types of maturity model. Let's dive deeper into this Devportal content maturity model in more detail. This model is designed to help you assess the current state of your content and identify the necessary steps to improve it. Let's see an overview of the different levels. Here, as you can see, an overview of the model. We go through these in accordance with what we shared with you in the last few minutes. So let's get started.
All right, so we have arrived to the foundation stage. This is level 1. Here, according to our model, content is ad hoc, unstructured and inconsistent, and the existing content might be incomplete or outdated. As Adam introduced the new viable documentation, this is already present. The API reference specifications, for example, or the get started guides or API overview docs. But they are often incomplete and inconsistent and lack depth. But Adam will elaborate on them shortly. There are no formal guidelines, and the content may be outdated or poorly maintained at this stage. It lacks structure and may be difficult to navigate through it. And also, content may not yet meet the web content accessibility guidelines. For example, there are no clear structured settings, but we will get to that also. And there is also no defined target audience at this point. They are mostly, of course, developers, but it's not stated yet. So let's see some advancement steps regarding the process. This is a homework for the organization where you are. You have to put effort into it. First, you have to contact the content audit, create a content inventory, and list what you already have, what is missing, and identify gaps and prioritize the missing or incomplete content. Also, establish basic style and formatting guidelines. You should create a style guide based on your needs. Then introduce basic content management. You could, for example, use lightweight tools like Confluence or DocuService for managing and organizing content. But we think it would be a good idea to stay future-proof and use a CMS, like, for example, Drupal, because it has to stay scalable and your project can grow with your needs. Also, it's important to improve accessibility standards. Start with basic text formatting for the sake of readability. So that, as I already wanted to mention, clear headings and alt text for images.
And it is also a good idea, as we were talking about style guides, to include these accessibility standards into the style guide that you can use later on as the project matures. And yeah, now we arrived at
That's in the advancement.
The further mature your content, focus on the official document, like the minimum viable documentation. the API reference documentation, of course, is the heart and soul of a developer portal, although we usually say that it's by itself is not enough, but it should be complete and useful. So the API reference documentation is a comprehensive catalog of the endpoints, method parameters, and response attributes. This content must be consistent and useful and presented in a standard format, like the API Open API specification used to be Swagger. The inclusion of the triad functionality is also highly valuable and requested by developers. And also the basic structure of this kind of type of documentation should be the following, like have an overview section with an introduction. The developer should know how to authenticate and authorize him or herself in order to get started using the API. If he or she encounters some issues, there should be some resolution presented, an error handling section. And of course, it should be clearly stated how the user can request a resource and how this response will be presented to him or her. So these foundation documents must be completed before almost any other content can be developed, as users cannot effectively access the APIs without them being 100% complete. Well, if you are starting from scratch, focus on completing the reference doc first, and if you are refining existing documentation, prioritize reviewing and improving these reference materials. This may take a considerable time, depending on the size of your organization or your API project and the available resources you have. However, the thoroughness of your review directly impacts user satisfaction at the very beginning. So give reference docs the time they need to be comprehensive, including code samples that might also enhance clarity and usability for developers. And if you're talking about getting started guides, it is also essential for helping users quickly understand how to complete a task with your API, at least how they can start completing a task with your APIs, and realize its benefits. It should offer the shortest path from start to, well, maybe to the finish, but at least how they can start their journey, providing a clear and simple introduction. So, for example, it can be a guide from user registration through authentication, all the way to making the first Hello World request. This guide is critical for API adoption and onboarding new users. And also, it can be the founding of an upcoming content, which targets non-technical users as well. So if you don't have a Get Started guide yet, it should be the next priority after completing the reference documentation, as it directly impacts how quickly new users can begin working with your API. And of course, the API overview, the third leg of the MVP documentation, provides high-level information about what the API does, how it works, and the problems it solves. This document offers essential context for both developers and business stakeholders, helping them understand the API's purpose and value. So, key questions to address in this kind of documentation is: what does the API do? When and why would someone want to use the API? How does it work? What are key concepts do users need to understand? So the overview should be the last one to focus on. This allows you to develop a deeper understanding of the API and its users after working through the other documentation. So while the overview is crucial for some users, it serves a smaller, so to say, audience compared to the reference guide, at least at this stage. But if you're improving an existing set of documentation, it is important to review and streamline the remaining content as well. And maybe you can try separate concepts, tasks, and reference information into distinct content types or articles. For example, how to articles, you can transform them later into useful tutorials, step-by-step instructions. Concept articles can be later, for example, even blog post or some part of the onboarding materials, and of course the reference information should or can be broken down into small focused content pieces covering a single topic. Yeah. So this structured approach ensures clarity and accessibility, making it easier for users to find the information they need. And it is also to talk about the documentation quality standard. We chose the 7 C's of technical writing, which can serve as a comprehensive standard, so to say, ensuring that technical documentation is effective, user-friendly, and meets the needs of its audience. So maybe it's well known that the 7 C's of technical writing are the clear, which means that the technical documentation communicate its goal and your company's goal concisely and with minimal ambiguity. It gets to the point quickly, uses specific details and examples to illustrate concepts, ensures technical accuracy and error-free content, maintains logical flow and connected ideas, provides all the necessary information to perform tasks, and also encourages that the content is empathic and maintain a helpful tone throughout. Yeah. So if we would dive deeper, so be clear about your goal or message. And here you can see 2 examples, but why is the second example is better? So because, okay, it's simpler, more straightforward, uses a simpler, more straightforward language. It eliminates unnecessary words and jargons. It breaks the information into a bulleted list, which improves readability and helps users quickly grasp the key points. And of course, it addresses the reader directly. And yeah, the second one is concise, which means that it sticks to the point and it's brief, but it's not that brief that to eliminate the important information. But of course, it removes the unnecessary details and redundant phrases. It breaks down the instructions into clear numbered steps, making it easier for the user to follow and act on. It uses numbered lists, which makes the process visually simpler and allows users to follow each step sequentially without confusion, uses action-oriented steps, and focuses on what the user needs to do without over-explaining. And instead of vague expressions, you should aim to give the user a complete understanding of what's available, but also you need to remove ambiguity. And of course, technical documentation should be error-free and accurate, which means it shouldn't contain grammatical errors and also has to provide valid and accurate technical details, of course. And if you are talking about coherency, it's also important to highlight that also the number steps make the instructions easy to follow. And for optimal quality, you should omit the unnecessary details and to focus instead on the essential actions the user needs to take and use direct commands. And also, it's important to empower users to take direct action, leading to a smoother user experience. And instead of suggesting users, for example, to consult the manual or only if they are stuck, you should proactively offer help by highlighting the availability of the different resources. You should tell your users exactly where they can find the user manual or the contact us form or the solution, making it easier for them to access the information or the solution they might need. So, for example, by mentioning the option contact the support team, it reassures the users that they have multiple avenues for assistance, enhancing their overall experience. You should, of course, use straightforward language. The content should be user-friendly, of course, making it more accessible for users who might be hesitant to seek help. And if we're talking about accessibility, David,
The floor is mine.
the floor is yours.
Okay, now that we have sailed through the 7 C's, let's see what to improve in terms of accessibility. On this picture, you can see an example document in VS Code, and I will talk a minute or two about headings, alt text, and links. So instead of using simply bold formatting, use semantic markup for heading structure. This will facilitate keyboard navigation and the use of screen readers. You can add shortcuts or table of contents, whatever you call them, which mirrors your heading structure and summarizes what your users can read about in the chapter or section. And it also improves navigation and makes it easier for visually impaired users to consume your content. And I will show you some examples here. So don't just bold, because don't just make the text bold because it makes it hard to navigate for visually impaired users. Use the semantic markup language. Yeah, and it's also important to have alternative text, because image alt text are so they are important because they enhance accessibility, particularly for visually impaired users who rely on screen readers. Alt text provides a textual description of images, allowing these users to understand the content and the purpose of the image. It also ensures that information isn't lost if the image fails to load, and offers a fallback that maintains the user experience. So in short, alt text improve usability, accessibility, and search visibility. And it's important to have at least some basic ones, but not ones like, for example, image or graph, because your users won't tell anything to your users. The more descriptive they are, the better, but we don't expect them to be perfect at this stage. But we will show you some good examples, good and bad examples later on. And also, it's also important to have descriptive links, because links enhance navigation for all users. Just like alt text, they should be descriptive enough to help users to navigate. So, for example, you should avoid link text like click here, show the users what they will get if they click on the link. And also, with the shortcuts, you can offer skip links. And it's also important from a technical aspect to have a skip link on your site. As I mentioned, at headings, use them as shortcuts, which mirrors the heading structure so that users can quickly skim through your content and skip to the content they need. Yeah, and if the previously mentioned are all met, you can advance to the next level, which is the organized stage, level 2.
But before we advance, then let's have a quick overview of the possible documentations types that may have on a developer portal at level 1. So you should have API documentation, API reference, onboarding docs, quick start guides, some kind of onboarding guides, troubleshooting, the basic ones, support resources, just to make sure that at least you have a contact form, a list of the basic error codes, maybe some basic FAQs, but they are not really complete. And of course, there are some maybe some subject matter experts on your end, maybe developers or somebody from the support team, or maybe even some technical writers who can help you create these content. And as we mentioned, that the target audience will be just developers at this stage. So a developer portal project needs an owner within the organization, and the importance of documentation should not be forgotten either. So in terms of workflow, it is important to clear who's responsible for what and to formalize your processes for content creation and review. And if you would like to learn more about workflows, especially about how well we work, check out our previous webinar about tech writing team and project management, and read the related blog post on the Pronovix site. Yeah,
let's advance with the organized stage.
So the second one is the organized stage, where content is structured and organized, and there are basic guidelines for content creation and maintenance present. So content is now at this level is logically structured with clear formatting guidelines. The target audience is defined, though maybe it is still primarily developers, but there is an increasing need to address business or other non-technical users as well. Minimum viable documentation components are complete and regular, but maybe informal, not scheduled. Content reviews are conducted. So, we can say that these content improvements are reactive and not proactive improvements. Quality standards are introduced and followed, and of course, the accessibility compliance with essential standards is in place at least in the very, very basic level. Yeah, and just to say about the accessibility, so as we discussed, the text alternatives for non-textual content are already there. Images now have relevant descriptive alt text.
You can use the alt decision tree.
Yeah, but yeah, there are several useful resources out there in the internet that you can use if you are in doubt. And as David mentioned earlier, here you can see a bad and a good example of an alt text. Yeah, the first one is too vague, does not explain the content or purpose of the code. The other one explains the specific use and helping users understand the content if they have to rely only the alt text, because yeah. About, would you like to continue?
I think, yeah. Oh. So at this stage, readability is better, keyboard navigation is easy, it supports screen readers, and as we said, as an advancement step, we already use semantic markup languages. You can and avoid certain special characters which could disturb the work of or the use of screen readers. The alt text, the link text and the alt text as well are descriptive, and there is a consistent and logical documentation structure.
It is also important to mention the use of plain English, for example, and of course, as David said earlier, the headings should be well structured, and yeah. Yeah, we can continue. Yes. So if we are talking about advancement steps, implementing a structured content guideline to standardize formats, the tone and the voice across all content is something that you can do. And at this stage, you might need to consider using more robust CMS to manage and categorize the content and to cater to the different user needs, because maybe developers who develop the APIs rely on or they want to stick with their old CI/CD pipeline to publish their content on their publication environment. That's on the Devportal. But as your team grows, maybe there will be other stakeholders who don't want to use, for example, these kind of tools, and they would like to stick with some WYSIWYG editors or collaborating writing tools like Google Docs or Word or something like this. And the environment is essential here to make sure that all parties who are involved in the developer portal journey has the same user experience throughout their content creation journey, to make sure that the content that they produce will be presented in the same quality and with the same design guidelines, like it would just be created by one team. And yeah, so you need to think about establishing content review processes and to set up schedules, for example, for content reviews and content updates with clear roles. And of course, there are other accessibility standards that you might want to address. And let's see these in more details. And about how to write, for example, better API reference documentation. there is some guidelines that maybe we should give you. For example, about the title, the API title should effectively convey its purpose by being clear, concise, and specific, as just is stated with our documentation standards. So, for example, the title should clearly indicate the API's functionality, making the title easy to understand and remember. So don't use title which is too generic, not descriptive enough, or rely on internal jargon that might not be understandable to external users. For example, for the comprehensive API description, maybe you should start with a high-level overview of the API's purpose to help developers quickly gauge its relevance to their needs. Instead of a vague title, use a more descriptive approach. You can outline key capabilities and operations the API offers, providing a roadmap of functionality without overwhelming developers with detailed descriptions. But clearly list and describe the resource collections exposed by the API, helping developers understand the data structure and organization. And of course, which is really important, that you can include Markdown formatting to structure and streamline your descriptions. So and also you can even add HTML snippets. So you can even add, if you have the opportunity or the publication environments lets you can put actually create call-out boxes within the API specs using the displayed solution. So use meaningful operation IDs that reflect the operation capability. Start with a verb and describe the operation's purpose. Provide detailed information and context about the operation, including its expected outcome, side effects, and use cases. Include examples of requests and responses. Describe what the operation or the path does and why it is needed. Think about what the user is doing when they use a certain endpoint and what context. And for every parameter, specify its name, type, location, because it's query path, header, whether it is required, and a clear description. Provide detailed descriptions for each schema object, including its purpose, data types of its properties, and any constraints or validation rules. Define reusable schema objects in the components /schema section and reference them using the ref keyword to reduce redundancy and improve maintainability. Include all possible response codes for each operation. Define a single error response format for all operations, ideally using the RFC 7808 or the newer 9457 standard. And I believe that this is crucial to link to external documentation for additional help. So consider links, providing links to resources like the API overview page, the Get Started guide, for, of course, common patterns, pagination, error responsive, SDKs, or other libraries. So to create a complete user journey, you have to make sure that every content piece is related to something that is equally important, to make sure that wherever a user starts the journey, the user will eventually find everything that might be needed, and of course that they will complete their journey. You can use tools like Spectral to validate the Open API specification against your defined standard. You can also there is the security rule set that you can employ to catch and fix common API security mistakes. But if you would like to check your Markdown content, we suggest to try out Whale, which is very lightweight solution to address the different style guide violations.
Yeah, and let's see what's here to improve regarding accessibility. Organizations at this level should implement structured content guidelines. So they should standardize format, tone, and voice across all content. And each persona, each user has a different journey, but consistency helps them to navigate more easily on the portal. So to foster their user experience, you need clear navigation structure. To achieve this, use the same visual styling, use the same wording, and structure it hierarchically. For example, you could have a global navigation, which is visible on the top of the page, then in form of a drop down, a secondary navigation, and going down on the lower levels to the lower levels. And also, you could use crosslinks to ensure navigation between related sections, but you have to make sure that they are relevant, meaningful, and of course, there are no broken links, because that way your users wouldn't reach the content they want to read. Consistent menu structure prevents people from getting lost or confused, especially for screen reader users or screen magnifier using users and people with cognitive disabilities. Crosslinks can help to connect these sections. And besides the previously mentioned content level accessibility guidelines, try to meet the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines level AA standards, including the enhanced contrast ratio between text and background and the better support for assistive technologies. For example, to make your portal responsive so that images are visible and text are still readable, then you only need vertical scrolling for that. But these are other technology-related aspects and not content. Okay, so here we are now, approaching level 3. And as you can see, that the number of content types are slowly, steadily growing. We now have use cases, trial sections, step-by-step tutorials, etc. Also, our consumer personas are not just devs anymore, but business decision makers and support engineers too. And let me stress it here that this does not necessarily has to be the same on your developer portal project, but this is what we assume how it should be. And let's see really quick the relevant changes in terms of culture and workflow. Cultural shifts include that you should focus on creating high-quality content that is consistent in tone and format across all documents. You should encourage a user-first approach, where the top priority is to consider what the users need and how they will experience the content. Workflow-wise, use tools to keep content organized and create clear rules for how documents should be structured. And as Adam said, set up regular content reviews to make sure that the information stays up to date and correct. This way, we arrive at the third level, the well-defined developer portal. Content here is standardized and follows well-defined guidelines and is comprehensive and up-to-date. And I believe this is the most desired level currently. On this level, business goals are defined and documented. The content is comprehensive and covers all key areas of the minimum viable documentation in depth. The content consistently adheres to content guidelines and standards previously set. The content is kept current with regular updates, for example, with scheduled review sessions and then iterations afterwards. During these updates, user feedback is actively sought and incorporated, whether it's internal or external, depending on the nature of the portal. The portal has clear information architecture and navigation structure through which it's easy to find the best structured content. And let's see the advancement steps to level 4, which is basically the cherry on top. So to leverage analytics, use tools like Google Analytics or Hotjar to track content performance and user engagement. To facilitate these, incorporate user feedback loops, or in other words, implement feedback mechanisms like surveys, direct feedback forms, and usability testing. Personalize the content on the developer portal. So, start using personalization tools for search optimization and personalized content recommendations. And it's also important to start to communicate with your target audience, for example, in form of newsletters with business insights, product updates, or even through blog posts to build a community. And last but not least, accessibility also should be optimized. So you should refine content to address common accessibility issues to ensure accessibility compliance checks are integrated into the content process. For example, you could use accessibility limiters like X. And if applicable, and you have such content, for example, pre-recorded audio or video content, you should provide captions and transcripts to them. And yeah, here you can see what type of documentation we already have at level 3.
Yeah, actually, almost everything that we introduced you at the very beginning, as you can see that almost everything is now complete and up to date. Regarding the community-related ones like Balogh or Forum, maybe they are just they're not really well mature now, and also about the metrics, but they are present at least at some level. And here you can see that the number of the content types is growing again, with metrics, docs, and support resources. Also, production and consumer personas are becoming more and more flamboyant. So first, get development, marketing, and support teams working together to make sure content meets user needs and business goals, and encourage a mindset of ongoing improvement and being flexible about responding to user feedback. Of course, it doesn't mean that you cannot start collecting user feedback in the very beginning, of course. Start using data and analytics to guide content, updates, and improvements, and set up ways to regularly gather and act on user feedback. And yeah, so now let's take a peek to level 4, which is a solution portal, or this is the ideated name, where content is continuously improved through proactive strategies and advanced techniques. There is a focus on innovation and user experience. And without giving you more details about this stage, you have a chance to take a look on Christoph Van Tomme's webinar about this topic. You will find the link to it in the chat and, of course, in the slides later on. So, but before we move forward, let's keep this slide in the chat, or at least in shared. And if we will can talk about, for example, AI and developer portals, I don't know, maybe we can open a short discussion about this, that how you imagine this, for example, the next step from an API developer portal to solution portal, so to say, where every integration is complete, publicly available, and maybe there is an AI layer on top of it. I don't know if any of you have some ideas, maybe, that you can share. If not, then let's go to the takeaways.
All right. Okay, so we have the following takeaways. Consider the needs of all parties involved, so producers and consumers alike. Foster cross-functional collaboration among various teams. Advancing content maturity involves not only procedural changes, but also significant cultural shifts within the organization. And that emphasizes ownership, quality, and innovation. Expand the content from basic materials to comprehensive resources to cater to the needs of all potential customers.
And provide accessible content, keeping in mind the quality standards and your own style guide, ensuring compliance with accessibility standards. And these should be integrated into the content strategy to create an inclusive user experience. Keep the content up to date regularly, and of course, collect user feedback and reflect on it.
All right. So let's just quickly, before we wrap it all up, we want to share with you our technical writing services, which we believe could help you on your documentation maturity journey. So we offer a content audit to identify gaps and inconsistencies in your content, but we also can help you with content strategy to ensure your business content will be clear, consistent, and relevant to best serve your business needs. We can also help you with creating and enhancing your content, creating the missing and enhancing your existing content. And what else do we have, Adam?
Well,
Information architecture.
yeah, so we have a UX team. We can reorganize your content to improve navigation and accessibility, making it easier for developers to find what they need. It can include user journey mapping or content restructuring. And we provide continuous updates and maintenance to keep your documentation up to date as your API or your dev portal evolves. We can figure out long-term plans with your team. We can have regular updates and some content health monitoring solutions. And
yeah, we have just reached the end of our maturity model webinar. And this maturity model is, of course, not the only one that you could apply. We recommend to choose the one that you see fit your needs the best. Our goal was, as we mentioned at the beginning, to show something similar yet different. So thank you for your kind attention. It's been a pleasure, and now it's our time to listen.